If you like psychology, then you will love this. If you run a business and you want to get really, really good at marketing, you've got to use behavioral science. And behavioral science is the science and the psychology of how humans make decisions. And that's so important because all the time in our lives, we are making decisions, and we have got to the point right now of where we are in our life because of the decisions we've made in general, basically. And so to get really good at marketing and to increase your conversions, to increase your sales and to increase, all the good bits of your business, you've got to understand and be able to predict how people are making decisions and then influence those decisions ethically. And this is really, really interesting because when we look at behavioral science, which is what my entire YouTube channel is about, and we look at the actual studies of behavioral science, something really interesting stands out. So when they conduct a study in behavioral science, they will measure something, and they will have a control group, and then they'll also have the group where they're measuring something. So for instance, if they were measuring the power of authority, how humans respond to authority and how they comply, they would have a control group which would measure non-authority figures. So how would people react when there's a non-authority figure in the room? And then they would have a separate study where they would be measuring people, how they react when there is an authority figure in the room. And what they would find is that usually when there's the presence of an authority figure, people's mind in the study would drastically change. They would act in completely different ways. They would, be influenced to a particular decision, right? And that was all part of the experiment. That's all cool. And that is how, how we read behavioral science now. That is how we've, understood the science behind it. We now know that people react differently in the presence of authority figures. But what's really, really interesting is that during any behavioral science study, there is always a debrief at the end of the study. And in the debrief, they'll always say to the participants, hey, we told you we were testing this, but actually we were really testing this. And what we found is that when we introduced an authority figure in this study, you guys acted differently than the control group, right? You would think that people would turn around to that and be like, that's so interesting. I wouldn't imagine that I would act differently, but that's really interesting, the findings. But what actually happens in these debriefs is people turn around and they're like, no, I don't think that's quite true. Actually, I acted differently because I wanted to act differently. And that was my entire choice to act differently. And then when they get told again that actually, no, you acted differently because of the presence of an authority figure, they will turn around once again and say, actually, no. And they'll get a little bit annoyed at the person trying to debrief them. And this has been found again and again and again in behavioral science studies. And the reason why is, A, we don't really know what we want and we don't really know what we respond to as human beings. And B, we like to feel that we're in more control than we actually are. And so when it comes to customer research and improving your business organization and actually, trying to improve your marketing and getting more customers and listening to customer feedback, we've then suddenly got to be very, very careful around what feedback we actually listen to. Because if you go to a bunch of guys on a street and you say to them, hey, you know what, would you prefer to eat a salad and get a six-pack, or would you prefer to, eat a burger and be out of shape? Most people would say I prefer to eat a salad and get a six-pack, but actually that's not really what people respond to. I live in a small city in the UK. It's a beautiful city, and every now and again we have a health shop that gets set up where all they do is they sell organic, healthy food. That's like they'll make it in front of you, cook the chicken, make the avocado, etc. And almost within a year, all of these health shops go out of business. The reason why is because on customer research, people will always say, yeah, you know what, I would love a health shop. I would love to shop at it. But what actually happens is they go to the pizza place instead. And so it's really, really interesting how people basically rationalize the decision to think they have more control over their lives than actually what they do. Control over their decisions, not control over their lives. And this is very, very important that you understand this and get it in your head when it comes to actually running your business and doing your marketing as well, because a bunch of customers will tell you they want one thing and they will actually respond to different things. And there's also the argument as well that when we process a decision, we process it in two different systems. So any quick, automatic or conscious decisions get processed in the quick part of our brain, which is system one. So behavioral scientists propose that we actually have two parts of our decision-making processes in our brains. The first part is system one, where we make quick, fast decisions. So for instance, when we see an urgent deadline, we might click on the link to claim the prize because we're worried about time running out. That's a system one decision. It was quick, it was conscious. When I tie my shoes in the morning before I leave my house, I hopefully, at my age, mid-30s, I don't have to think about tying my shoes. It's a system one decision. It's quick, it's conscious. But when I actually leave my house and, go to the train station if I'm working from a different city, I will have to look at the train times. I'll have to make sure I'm jumping on the right train. It's all system two, which is slow, conscious decisions. When you get an email from a client asking a bunch of decisions, asking a bunch of questions to you, which requires you to think logically, that is system two. So when people in customer feedback, customer research and the end of behavioral science studies, and they get asked or told that, hey, you were influenced because of this, or hey, what differences would you like in our product next year? They will answer with the slow, logical part of their brain, which is system two. But actually, they are responding with their actions when it comes down to it with system one, which is a completely different side of their brain. So for instance, if I go and buy a TV from some sort of shop, it's Black Friday, I see a beautiful TV in like Curry's or PC World or some sort of supermarket in the UK, and suddenly I decide to buy it, right? And I come home and, my wife says, why have you bought this TV? We don't need a TV. What I will do is I'll say, well, I'll rationalize it with system two, and I'll say, well, you know what? Our TV at the moment, it's losing its color a little bit. It didn't work as good as it used to. I could tell it's going to break, but this one it's a really good price. It's going to last for a long time. It's got beautiful colors, right? And that's system two explaining it. But in the actual shop, the decision that I was making was probably based around the fact that when I saw the TV, it was discounted, and it was discounted for a limited time, urgency. And it was all beautiful and colourful, and it was showing, some sort of sport event or a movie, right? And it was really colourful, so it was salient in my mind, right? And the guy came over to me to sell to me, and he said to me, this is the clearest TV that we've had in years. We've never combined AI with an LCD, HD, blah, 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 whatever. And I've listened to him because he's an expert. And I thought to myself, you know what, he's right, because it looks great. And so then I've made that decision to buy that thing in system one, and then I've went home and rationalized it to my wife in system two. This is all based on science, and it's fascinating to see because it makes me think not only when it comes to businesses, it's actually hard to solve the problems, and you have to test relentlessly to make sure that your customers, you find the objection that your customer really has, or the product improvements that they really have. But also as well, it makes me think about my day-to-day life and how often I get influenced and basically end up having to justify or rationalize the reason I made a decision in a particular way. It's just a quick video from me today. I'm not sat in front of my computer filming as I usually would, but I wanted to drop this video because it was just on my mind. And I hope you guys are well. Hope you're feeling Christmassy coming up to the holidays. Take care. See you soon.